We've got a ton of news today, including I want to talk about a scam that is happening for GPUs that seem too good to be true prices on Amazon. I've addressed this a little bit before, but I want to bring it up again. But first, tons of other stuff to get to. Let's start with this. NVIDIA DLSS 3 frame generation and AMD Fluid Motion frame tech combo delivers up to 3 times performance boost in games. What the heck is this all about? Now let me show you something really cool from today's sponsor, PowerColor, with their Red Devil GPUs with their swappable Devil Skin backplates. It's so cool not have to be locked into just one design. You can choose the one that fits best for you, easily swappable with magnets. We've got the intrusive Devil Skin, which is the kind of the simpler, sleeker looking one, and we've got the mesh design called the generative Devil Skin. These are all really cool. They just attach on with magnets. Excellent choice for a high-end GPU. Check the link in today's description. So first of all, let's clear up anybody who's unfamiliar with AMD Fluid Motion frame tech. This is kind of like FSR 3 from the frame generation sense, but on AMD GPUs from their 6000 and 7000 series, there is a preview driver, it's not in their official drivers yet, that allows turning on frame generation in basically any DX11 or DX12 game. It's just a toggle in your driver software where it will take any 2 images the game is spitting out, any 2 frames, and it will interpolate them. There's some downsides to this. It doesn't have access to motion vectors, so the quality can be lower than what you would get from an actual FSR 3 frame generation implementation. And also because of that, it can kind of give up if there's too much difference between frames. Oftentimes that happens if you're at a lower frame rate or in a fast-moving scene or both. But this is talking about using DLSS 3 frame generation combined with this. AMD Fluid Motion Frames is only available on AMD graphics cards, and DLSS 3 frame generation is not available on AMD graphics cards. So how could anyone possibly be combining these together? Well, I dug into this to find out. This is a WCCF Tech article, and all my links will be in the video description today. All my sources will be, and they're apparently getting the information from Quasar Zone, which is a Chinese language outlet where the testing actually took place, and they are posting results for using DLSS frame generation plus AFMF, AMD Fluid Motion frames, and they're using this just with native resolution. They're not using the upscaling technology. This is all just frame generation boosting these frame rates, so they are stacking them. But how are they doing it? So what it seems to be is they have actually been using an NVIDIA GPU and an AMD GPU in the same PC. Specifically, they're using an RTX 4090 to actually render the game. They're playing the game on the 4090. However, they also have a much cheaper AMD 6000 series GPU. I believe it's an RX 6600 installed in the same PC, and that is the one I believe actually interfacing with the monitor. Now, apparently, if they've set up the game correctly to render on the 4090, they can then use the AMD GPU to kick on Fluid Motion frames into the basically what's actually outputting to the monitor. And this will then stack. So basically, the game is running on the 4090 at native resolution. It's using frame generation to then increase the frames through interpolation. And then those frames are being fed to the RX 6600, which then interpolates those frames, including interpolating the already interpolated frames from frame generation, from DLSS 3 frame generation, and then that finally outputs to the screen. So with that in mind, obviously there are going to be multiple layers of both image quality artifacting as well as increased latency involved in both of these processes. And in my own personal testing, Fluid Motion Frames has had some frame pacing issues, which means I don't always like using it. And even DLSS 3 frame generation itself isn't perfect, and I don't prefer, in some games I would prefer turning it off to turning it on. So stacking this, I don't know, is this something I should do a video on, see if I can make this happen and actually try it out for myself? This seems crazy, but the thing is, this would mean, because AMD's fluid motion frames can basically be turned on in almost any game, and then DLSS 3 frame generation is available in a lot of games, you could do this theoretically in a lot of games. Pretty much any game that has DLSS 3 if you went ahead and stuck another GPU into your system. Now, the impact to the 1% lows is often kind of bad here. And again, I'm really curious what the actual experience using this would be. My overall thought is that this is more of an interesting tech demo and not so much something that you would actually want to use. For example, I tried something similar to this when I looked at using FSR3 frame generation and fluid motion frames on top of it. I did try that, and you do get a performance boost, but it, from a frame rate standpoint, but the actual experience and frame pacing was actually quite bad. Now, this is a bit different because DLSS 3 frame generation, and then running the actual AFMF interpolation on a separate graphics card means the initial graphics card rendering the game isn't taking an additional performance hit. So this is certainly interesting, but without seeing it in person, I can't totally comment other than the fact that the 1% lows, again, are often critical to how smooth the game feels. And notice that those aren't boosting the same way everything else is, which tells me that this probably feels choppy and bad, but is an extremely interesting idea to basically throw in a cheap AMD graphics card as an additional frame interpolator. But like I said, I have a feeling the experience would actually be bad. Do you guys want me to test this in an actual video? I don't know if I have time, but I could try. Now, in other news involving a 4090, what about a new 4090? Let's get a totally different 4090, the 4090D, or the 4090 Dragon. Why would we need this? And would it be better than a normal 4090? No, this would be worse than a normal 4090. Why would it be worse? To comply with export restrictions to China. So this would be an RTX 4090 specifically designed to meet the AI-related export restrictions on GPUs to China so that hopefully NVIDIA could continue selling 4090s in China. They would need to be cut down in some way in order to be under the export restriction ban on GPUs that are too strong for AI for the US government to want them to be sold in China. So that's what this is all about. Now, how would they cut this down, and where is this information coming from? WCCF Tech basically had some of the initial information about this. It doesn't go into a lot of detail. But then we were also getting a tweet from Megasize GPU, who is a well-known GPU leaker, saying 4090D using an AD102-250, as opposed to the what is it, 300 that's used on the actual normal 4090 GPU. Again, that still doesn't tell us how this is cut down. So one option is it's just cut down enough and downclocked enough, or could you just downclock it a bunch to technically meet the restrictions and then people can just overclock it back to normal? And would you end up getting sued by the US government if you did that by just making it too easy to overcome the restrictions? I don't know. So this is still in the leaks and rumors phase, but it looks like there may be some sort of 4090D, 4090 Dragon to comply with the restrictions in China. Which would be, why would you care if you're not living in China? Because these restrictions on the 4090s coming into place have caused a lot of our 4090s elsewhere in the world to get shipped to China before those restrictions went in place, and causing the prices of 4090s to skyrocket worldwide. So, and additionally, it also looks like AMD 7900 XTXs and XTs sales are booming in China due to the 4090 import ban. And so basically this is having larger ramifications on the high-end gaming GPUs around the world, not just the 4090s in China specifically. On a related note, due to these restrictions and just the popularity of AI GPUs in general, we're also seeing apparently some 3080 20 gigabyte models, as well as other GPUs being converted into blower-style cards with extra VRAM soldered on, basically, for AI usage, especially, I think, in China. And when looking into this, it looks like a lot of these are likely to be former crypto mining farm GPUs that are now getting converted into AI GPUs for use in that. So just, anyway, kind of interesting stuff. In other news out of China, it looks like the new Chinese Lungson chip matches Intel's 14600K in IPC tests, overclocked to 3 gigahertz with liquid nitrogen. However, in just normal use cases, it looks like it's still basically an Intel Core i3-10100 competitor. So it looks like the domestic Chinese chips are still lagging significantly behind, AMD and Intel competition, but they are continuing to update and getting a new chip out there. Now, in other NVIDIA-related news, it's looking like the RTX 3060 isn't going to disappear from shelves. This is a videocards.com article. However, it looks like their information is coming from Board Channels and IT Home. But the basic information is that 3060 cards are going to continue to be supplied, and it's looking like that's at least going into first quarter of next year. And it's looking like the reason is to have 3060 12GB models out there to compete with some of the AMD offerings, things like that. Because again, while NVIDIA did replace the 3060 with the 4060 is an 8GB card, and VRAM has been a concern for a lot of people. So having a 12GB card at a low price point does still seem to fill a nice spot in their offerings. So it's looking like that. If these, again, this is kind of the rumor mill side of things, not official announcements, does look like NVIDIA is continuing to offer 3060s 12GB for a while now to fill that gap. And to round out the rumor mill, why don't we talk about NVIDIA's next-gen HPC and AI GPU architecture name? Apparently, it could be named after Vera Rubin, so you could get R100 GPUs to replace the Blackwell B100s. Although, again, this is still in the rumor mill side of things rather than official. Let's hop into some AMD news. So it's looking like AMD has an official beta GPU driver, so not one of their WHQL main driver releases, that is for Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, which is coming out on December 7th. Is that a game you guys would like me to benchmark on the channel when it comes out? Certainly something I may have time to do. We'll see. Anyway, within this driver, though, AMD is apparently allowing enabling of HAGS for RX 7000 series GPUs. Now, what is HAGS? This is hardware accelerated GPU scheduling, and that was previously available in a 2020 20.5.1 driver a long time ago. And apparently this didn't actually do much for these 6000 series of GPUs and just wasn't even offered as a supported feature there. Now, it doesn't look like in people who have tested this so far, this is actually offering much in the way of measurable performance improvements, although I haven't tested it out myself in any way, and you wouldn't expect it to make a massive difference anyway. But anyway, it looks like the return of that feature is available in this driver, but this is also not a standard main driver line release. Again, this is a beta driver for Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. In other AMD-related news, we'd seen AMD launching high-end mobile chips finally with the RX 7900M in the Alienware M18R1 laptop. Notebook Check now has a review out finally for this, and links will be in the video description if you want to take a look. It does look like in synthetic benchmarks, it can best the RTX 4080 laptops. However, in actual gaming workloads, depending on the gaming workload, and again, ray tracing and all that, the 4080 can still be beat the 7900M. Also, power efficiency is a big deal. In desktop PCs, the fact that NVIDIA's 40 series is significantly more power efficient than AMD's 7000 series can sometimes be more of an afterthought. It's certainly something to take note of, especially depending on your power supply. And in the region you live in, perhaps your energy bill, it's something to think about. But for a lot of people who have a big enough power supply, it's not that big of a deal. However, in a laptop form factor, it can significantly impact battery life if you're not plugged in. To have a less efficient GPU, especially a high-powered GPU like these. So that is something I looked for in this test, and it was confirmed that the 4080 laptops were able to provide a lot better life on battery than the 7900M could. Anyway, again, link in the video description if you want to take a look at the full review and benchmarks and all of that. In other AMD-related news, we're seeing leaks in Geekbench of Ryzen 9 8940H, Ryzen 7 8840HS, and Ryzen 5 8640HS Phoenix APUs. However, it's not looking like, from what I can tell, they're really showing much different than what you would get from the 7940HS, 7840H and HS, and 7640H and HS. And if you look at the specs that are being reported, they're basically exactly the same cores and threads at exactly the same base and boost clock, although the GPU clock is still unknown at this point, and that could be relevant. But it does look like it's the same GPU configuration. We're still at basically an R780M and a 760M on the lower end model there, with the same amount of compute units and the same TDP. So unless there's somehow just a higher boost clock enabled on these GPUs, this basically looks like the fact that AMD's new naming scheme uses the first number as the year they're released in. So as we get into 2024, they'll put an 8 in front of them. But as far as I can tell so far, maybe we'll see otherwise once these are officially out there, there doesn't really seem to be much of a difference other than the year. So we'll see. In other AMD little, kind of mini PC APU style news, we're seeing Ayaneo unveiling Macintosh-inspired retro mini PC with an AMD Ryzen 3200U and 5700U APU options. Prices starting at only $149, and these do look cool if you're into the like retro Macintosh kind of thing. So interesting stuff. There's like the actual 1984 one versus this 2023 Ayaneo launch. Anyway, what obviously not actually running Mac OS and all of that. Anyway, so kind of info about it, and basically the $149 price is based on a bare bones 3200U, where you would then have to add in your own, what would it be, RAM and SSD, that type of thing. 5700U bare bones starting at $219. So kind of interesting. I'm sure somebody out there might have a need for these, so mentioning that. And in other mini PC news, we're seeing the first AMD Ryzen Z1 powered mini PC tested. Now the Z1 is like the APU that's in like the ROG Ally, for example. However, the Z1 Extreme is the one in the more powerful ROG Ally, and the cheaper, less powerful version is the Z1 Non-Extreme. This is a VideoCardz.com article, but it looks like the information is coming from an ETA Prime video where he tested out a Ryzen Z1 mini gaming PC, not Z1 Extreme. But it does mention that the company has informed him that there is a Z1 Extreme version already in development. That would probably be the more interesting one from a performance standpoint, with the Z1 Non-Extreme really just maybe being more efficient, but they're cutting out a lot of GPU cores. So if your application is gaming related, that would take a significant hit potentially compared to what we'll probably see from the Z1 Extreme versions. Now, in other AMD news, this is the scam I was talking about. I mentioned this a couple months ago in one of my GPU, best GPU value for the month videos. However, I haven't mentioned it since then, and the scams do seem to be back, and I've been seeing people talking about them in my comment sections. I've even had emails where people are like, there's this amazing deal on Amazon, check it out. And I'm like, hate to tell you, that's a scam. Now, Sapphire Technology on Twitter is now specifically addressing this, because the specific scams are almost always Sapphire branded GPUs on Amazon, but they're not shipped and sold by Amazon or from Sapphire's official store or even a trusted third-party store. They're from random looking Chinese character, like these really long Chinese names. I don't speak Chinese, so I can't tell if they actually mean anything, but it seems to be just really long strings of Chinese names, and there's various of these pop up. Some of them have actual user reviews for the store that seem trustworthy, but trust me, these deals are not. And that's what Sapphire is confirming here. And we're talking like 7900 XTX for like half the price, $400. You're not gonna really get that GPU, guys. It's not real. And that's what they're saying here. Sapphire is saying, we've been getting questions again recently regarding scam sellers on Amazon. We want to once again remind everyone looking to purchase GPUs from Amazon, please check that the box specifying ships from, sold by, both indicate Amazon.com and not another seller. It should say ships from Amazon and sold by Amazon. Some third-party sellers are legitimate, but if you're seeing a half-price GPU from some incredibly long string of Chinese characters, the English written out version of the Chinese character names, it's just not real, guys. So bringing that to your attention again. And sorry, I know you get excited when you see the good deal. It's on Amazon. It must be real. It's not. In other news, the Xbox November update coming soon. Compact mode, Japanese language support for keyboards and more. Compact mode, with the growing popularity of handheld gaming PCs, it's looking like the Windows Store is getting a compact mode, which will help like collapse tabs on the side and things like that, just to be easier to manage in that mode. Now, there's a lot of other things that I would like to see improved by the store, but there's another thing on here that, let's see, where is it listed in here? It's in here somewhere. Additional improvements. This is it. To me, this is the bigger deal for people not on a handheld device. I've had a lot of issues using the Windows Store. I was subscribed to Game Pass for a long time. You try to install the games, and sometimes the installations would just break, or I wouldn't be able to launch the games after I'd installed them. There were all sorts of random issues would pop up. It's really frustrating to use this app to install your games. And they're saying that, we've heard that you want a more streamlined experience when diagnosing and troubleshooting. Well, it'd be nice to just not have issues in the first place, but anyway. So we've added the new Game Services Repair Tool, a dedicated tool to fix any issues with gaming services or missing content when launching the Xbox app on PC. To use this feature, click on your profile in the top left corner of the app and select Support. This is a good thing, because usually when I would have issues, it came down to issues with the gaming services on Windows, and I'd have to find ways of deleting it, repairing it, and whatever. Anyway, I haven't actually had to use this yet or check it how this works, but I'm glad that they're acknowledging this issue and trying to make it easier to solve these problems when they come up. Speaking of Game Pass, it looks like it's been confirmed that Game Pass on PlayStation 5 and Switch are not in any current plans, and Microsoft has also revealed that they're spending $1 billion a year getting third-party games onto the service, but have also stated that the service is still profitable, and that does allow them to fund production of more niche games and things like that, which is cool. Anyway, in other news, maybe I should have included this more in my mini PC section, but whatever, we'll talk about it now. It looks like Raspberry Pi 5 is now actually able to work with discrete GPUs. Discrete eGPUs weren't working on previous Raspberry Pis, to my knowledge, and as this VideoCorners.com article is discussing, due to issues with being PCIe Gen 2 interface, just being too low of bandwidth for effective gaming on a discrete GPU, but also just with various bugs and issues. Well, it is looking like the Raspberry Pi 5 goes up to PCIe Gen 3 specs, and it has now been tested successfully, it looks like here by Jeff Geerling, to be working with some discrete GPUs, which is good to see, and I'm sure some people will put that to use. Now, Windows Report has an exclusive leak on Dell and Alienware next-gen laptops as well as accessories. It looks like this is information that should be coming out in CES, but is getting leaked here. And this does include laptops coming out with Intel's next-generation Core Ultra CPUs. I'm going to have to get used to how their naming schemes work, but it doesn't look like all of them use it. Some of them, I think, were still using Raptor Lake, which was interesting. And you can get a look at some of these designs. And again, this article will be linked in the video description if you want to dig into more of those details. Now, in other news, we're seeing that Steam VR is now going to be easier to use on Quest VR devices due to Valve suddenly dropping a Steam Link tech directly into the Quest library. So you can now you don't have to go into any kind of third-party or separate applications to just link to Steam VR through your Quest device, which certainly seems like it's streamlining the process. Now, hopefully it works well. I haven't tested it out myself. But that does seem like it should be an easier process than before. Hopefully it works as well. Now, in other news, GPU-Z has released version 2.56.0, and it has an interesting tool. Previously, this just gave you information about your GPU. This seems like a totally separate thing, but could still be useful. A lot of people drag and take a lot of games, they release with a certain version of DLSS, whether it's the DLSS frame generation or 3.5 ray reconstruction, or whether it's just the upscaling tech. The machine learning models continually train, and oftentimes newer games release with newer versions of these DLLs, which sometimes, when dropped into games with older versions of the DLLs, will actually offer some image quality and or performance improvements over the versions the game's shipped with. And not every game updates its DLL after its initial launch. So previously you'd have to find the file yourself, figure out what version it is, and then maybe take an take a newer version of the DLL and drop it in. It looks like GPU-Z is now going to make that easier by having a tool for looking for NVIDIA DLSS DLLs, where it shows you the file path to get to them as well as the version that it is. And that certainly seems like a handy tool, although to me this seems different than what GPU-Z used to do. So, I mean, cool stuff though. So just be aware that's now a thing that it can do, which is awesome. So anyway, in other news, how about some GPU coolers? We have seen Noctua branded coolers in partnership with other, I think Asus has done a partnership there. Well, it's looking like the Japanese company SiCom is launching an RTX 4070 Ti cooler with Noctua fans. Now notice that this doesn't appear, as far as I can tell, to be an official collaboration with Noctua to offer a Noctua branded cooler. It's just putting Noctua fans into a SiCom cooler. Seems to be what we're seeing here. This is part of their Silent Master series. And notice that it's not having the full-on brown and beige color scheme for the entire thing. It just throws the brown and beige fans into a black, very square-looking cooler. And this appears to be quite thick. This is a 4-slot design, okay? 4-slot design here. Anyway, interesting that we're seeing an option like this, but yeah, it seems a bit different than what we'd seen before. Let's jump into some PC gaming news. Stalker 2 developer says it's hard to say how long polishing will take, but does confirm they're working on a 60 FPS performance mode for Xbox Series X. And they are confirming the minimum GPU they are trying to target on PC is a GTX 1060. So they are trying to target a GTX 1060 as the minimum GPU on PC, but they've said that, they're still hard at work on optimizations and they cannot confirm what settings or resolution or frame rate that'll actually end up being at. And with the 60 FPS mode for consoles, they again cannot confirm the resolution they'll be able to hit in that mode because optimization work is still ongoing. In other PC-related news, Tribes 3 Rivals has been unveiled and will launch next year on PC. And we even have system requirements for it, although due to the length of the video at this point in time, I'm not going to be able to say too much about it. Other than the minimum GPU is a 1060 or a Radeon RX 6500 XT. And the recommended GPUs are an RTX 2080 or RX 6700. But these are not listing the graphics settings, resolution, or frame rates that those should hit. We also have CPUs in there as well. Baldur's Gate 3 Patch 5 adds a unique to each playthrough epilogue, as well as new game modes and some apparent memory performance-related optimizations in Act 3. I haven't been able to test that myself for any performance number differences, but apparently this is related to the optimizations they had to figure out to get the game up and running on the Series S, but that those same optimizations can improve performance on PC, especially, they say, in memory-limited devices. In other PC news, Cyberpunk 2077 getting fully functional Metro system with patch 2.1. So there will be a series of metros added to the game for fast travel, and I believe actual interactions can take place on the Metro systems, as well as some reworked boss battles and various other updates. We're also seeing, I recently reported on Homeworld 3 system requirements. I'm getting a phone call, I'll have to call back. Anyway, Homeworld 3 system requirements in a recent video, but it looks like the release date is getting pushed back to March 8th. I'd previously reported it would be coming out in February, because that was the release date at the time. And the last thing I'll mention is that Rockstar has announced that GTA 6 will be getting a trailer on Tuesday, December 5th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Unclear if we'll get any PC-related news at that time, but that's what I've got for you guys today. Hope you guys found the video useful and or interesting, and a huge thank you to subscribers, channel members who hit the join button, and all of that. Thank you, and have an excellent day.